Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we are going to go through a how-to video on how to use the 1 of 7 projects planning aids. We're going to start with the most popular, the data sheet. We're going to move on to the town list, and we're going to finish up with the two charts, the mileage chart and the elevation gain chart. And just so you know, there will be a timestamp down listed in the description where you can find the different starting points for each one of these, so you can jump ahead and watch the individual how-tos for each planning aid. All right, let's get right into it. All right, so here we have a southbound data sheet for the tour divide. You've got rows and columns. You've got your headings across the top, which we'll go over as I show you guys this. All right, so first thing you need to know is that you're going to read it left to right, just like a book. Across one row, down to the next. Next thing you want to keep in mind is that the elevation and mile column, they pertain to Banff itself. And then from distance to next to this end column in the pavement section, they're talking about what you have to cover between these 2 points of interest. And then from distance from trail to the note section, you're once again specifically talking about Banff itself. So just keep that in mind when you're going across and you're reading this. All right, so first is location. I like to call it point of interest, or POI sometimes. And that is Banff. It is at the elevation of 4,700 feet, and it's at mile 0 of the route. You have to cover 51.8 miles, the distance the next, to get to Bolton Creek Trading Post. You have to have an elevation plus or elevation gain, 4,388 feet you have to climb. You're going to lose, or elevation minus, 3,460 feet. You have an average grade of 0.3% over that 51.8 miles. Your max elevation, or the highest point you'll see, is 63.62. And the minimum elevation you're going to see during that time is 45.72. Next, we have our pavement section. And you got a beginning, a middle, and an end. What you want to do is think about this as thirds. So first third, middle third, and the end third, or like 33% of that 51. So when you see the 4.9 here in this column, that's telling you that someplace in that last 33%, that last third, there's 4.9 miles of pavement. In this case, 1.1, someplace in the beginning, there's 1.1 miles of pavement. Now, it's not specifically at the end or the beginning, always. Sometimes it is. In this case, by experience, I can tell you that the 4.9 miles is the end of this distance, and this 1.1 is the beginning. But like I said, keep in mind, it's not always the case. Now, if you see 4.9 and then a slash 1.5, you're basically looking at two separate miles sections that have pavement. They're just going to have dirt between them. So multiple numbers in there, multiple pavement sections. All right. Distance from the trail. In this case, Banff is 0 miles off the trail because it's en route. You can find it on the Canada ACA map. And then resupply options are going to list to you what your options are. You notice here in Bolton Creek, there's a bunch of letters here. Those letters equal certain things, and you can find that key at the very bottom. We'll show that to you guys in a second. In this case, Banff has all services, has bike shops, and has an O, which is for an outfitter. There's 7,900 people, that's population, and then you have the note talking about the important things of that point of interest. So that is how you read the data sheet from one point to the next. All right, next thing to take note of is this row here. Bolton Trading Post is completely in blue. When you see the blue text like that, it is indicating that there is water on the course. Notice right here, there's a W there, and this also says water right here. What that is telling you is that there is water at this location. Now, there is lots of water on the course, and the planning aids only call out some of the more major water sources. So don't think that these are the only water sources on the course, but these are just some of the main ones. All right, you'll notice here that this 10 miles in this middle column of the pavement section has a green box around it instead of these others. When you see a green box, what that is telling you is that the entire 10 miles between the 2 points of interest, notice here, distance to next is 10. It's telling you that those 10 miles are completely paved. So green boxes around the mile number in the middle column is telling you that the entire distance between 2 points of interest is paved. Notice here that Swan River, Big Fork, Montana, and all these others have a red text to them. This red text indicates to you that the point of interest is off route. So you see here, Big Fork, Montana, distance from the trail, 2.2 miles. You go over here to the note, off route 2.2 miles west. Good options. So what that is telling you, the red said, is off route. Now, Whitefish Pass is on the route. It's in the black text, but there's a note here for the Pole Bridge, Montana, and that's indicating to you that that is the 29.3 miles off the route. So if you see a red, whatever it's talking about in that case is going to be off route. All right. One other thing I want to point out to you guys, you notice in the Big Fork note, there is a note saying Echo Lake Cafe en route 3.2 miles north. So Echo Lake Cafe is 3.2 miles north of this, so it's between Columbia Falls and Big Fork. But since it's only one building, it's the only resupply option there. It's not a very large option, so I did not feel it needed its own row or be called out here. So you'll see small notes like this throughout the notes field that are giving you additional information than the actual point of interest itself. So keep an eye out for those. Notice here the yellow band across the top with a very bold note of heavy grizzly activity. We got the note here in yellow, one down here in yellow. When you see something highlighted in yellow, it's something that you want to pay attention to. It's something that we've deemed important that you don't want to miss. And so keep an eye out for that on the data sheets. You'll see those throughout the town list and the data sheet. Something you want to make sure you pay attention to. All right. All right, here's that key that I mentioned before with all the letters that tell you what things are. We have an elevation side profile here given to us by John Schilling, who does the Arizona Trail Race. You can get mugs and other things from him at this website if you want to support that. And then we have some important phone numbers here for pickups and stuff like that down in the south from the guys down there. All right, the last thing here I'm going to point out to you guys is this target finish times. And what this chart is doing is it's helping you guys keep straight on what time you need to finish on what day and how fast you have to get there. In this case, start time of 8 a.m. I know there's staggered times now in the start, so you guys have to just mentally plug your number in. But if you start at 8 a.m. and you want to finish in 14 days, you have to finish on 6:23 and before that 8 a.m. time. But you have to average 190.7 miles or 7.9 miles per hour. And the reason why this is in here is that you start at 8 a.m., let's say you rode till midnight, and then you slept for 4 hours and you got up at 4 a.m. You've now woken up and it's the second time you've seen the sun during the race. So you're thinking I'm on day 2 because you've woken up to a second sunrise. Well, your day 2 doesn't start till 8:01. You still have 4 hours left in that day. I tell you, about a week or so into the race, 2 weeks into the race, this math can become confusing. So this chart will help you figure that out. All the data sheets have this note here in bold someplace toward the bottom. That's going to tell you which GPX track or file that it is based off of. Currently on the Tour Divide one here, it's based off the 2021 one because the one in 2022 had a fire detour. And that is the 10K GPX track because that's the one that fits into everyone's computer or their GPSs and all that. So keep that in mind, the 10K version of the whatever track it is. So while we're on the subject of the 10K track, I wanted to point out to you guys that being that racers have to use a 10K file, that compresses down the file size by eliminating waypoints. And when it does that, the course becomes a little less accurate. And in this case, if you go to the bottom of this page, it says that the whole race is 2,670.1 miles long. Well, we know that the Tour Divide is 2,700 feet, 27 or something like that. So you're already losing distance there. If you're buying any of the data sheets thinking the number is going to be exact, it won't happen. It's never going to happen, especially considering people use different modes of GPSs, Yahoos, their phones to navigate. None of those things are going to record the same. So the information that is here is as close as possible as it can be with the technology that we have and the variances within them. So it's not exact, but it's not off so badly that you are going to be misrepresented. So keep that in mind when you're doing it. A good example of that is right here. Banff's at 4,700 feet. If you add the 4,388 that you have to climb and subtract the 3,460, that should equal the elevation of Bolton Creek. Well, if you did that, you'd get 5,628. In this case, Garmin spit out to me 56.18. So in 52 miles, basically, it was off 10 feet of elevation. Not huge, but something to keep in mind. Numbers will never be perfect, but they're as close as they can be with the variances that we have to deal with the technologies out there. All right, so right here, we're going to look at the town list planning aid and going to go over the differences between that and the data sheet, and I'm going to show you guys how to use a planning aid. All right, let's go. All right, so here is the southbound Tour Divide town list planning aid. All right, so before I get into exactly how the town list works, I want to kind of explain to you guys the difference between it and the data sheet. The data sheet gives you information from point A to B, and then from B to C and C to D. It's not going to give you cumulative distances from A to D. It's just going to give the individual difference between each point of interest on the route. The town list gives you that cumulative distance. It's going to give you the distance from A to B, then A to C, A to D, A to E, let's say. And then when you go to the next thing, it's going to give you what it is from B to C, B to D, B to E. So let me show you that, guys, that right now. All right, so the page is red, Banff, down, up, down, up, down. All right, so down, down, down. All right, so you've got your mile number, 0. Banff is your point of interest. It's at mile 0. It's en route, so it's 0 miles off the route. There's your note, important information about Banff. Here's your little key, your resupply key. It's got all services. It has bike shops. It has an outfitter, which is the O. All right, and that key for all these little letters can be found at the bottom page. Bike shops are in pink because they're important, and sometimes you're your lifeline out there. All right, so if Banff is at letter, let's say, is A, that I was saying, and Bolton Creek is B, we have A to B, A to C, A to D, E, and F. So it's 51.8 miles from Banff to Bolton Creek. From Banff to Elk Pass, 56.6. These are your cumulative. You got a difference of 5.2 miles there, or 5.8 miles there between the two. Then Banff to Elk Prairie, 97.6. And these are your cumulative elevation gains and losses between those. This elevation column is telling you what elevation that Round Prairie is at. All right, so again, Banff to Bolton Creek, A to B, A to C, and so on. And now if you go to Bolton Creek, Banff is no longer on the route because you're by it. Now it's Bolton Creek to Elk Pass, Bolton Creek to Round Prairie, and so on. And the cumulative distances are changing. All right. We got a notes field. The notes field are just simple notes about the point of interest, and this being this point of interest right here. So these 3 pieces of information are together, and these guys are talking about what it is from this to these points of interest. All right, so yellow, take note, grizzly activity. Take a right. There's the take the right, the bigger note for taking the right at Round Prairie. So if you see yellow, it's important. Pay attention to the note. All right. Next up, colors. Wigwam Campground. The text is in blue. That indicates that there is water at that point of interest. Not all water sources are called out, just like on the data sheet. The more important ones or the more obvious ones are there, but there is other water on the course. All right. Next up, notice that Sealy Lake, the text is in red. Red text means that something is off route. So in this case, Sealy Lake would be off route. So is all these other ones here. And we'll go to Swan River Big Fork. So it's all in red. It tells you off route, where Columbia Falls, notice, en route, 0 miles off. This is 2.2. There's the note. Off route 2.2 miles west. All right. So red off route, blue water, pink bike shop. What gets tricky is, like on a note like this one up here, notice that here, Swan River Big Fork is in red. I can't change the font on half of this letter like I did up here on these words, just because of equations. So in this case, Swan River is en route. That's why it's in black. Big Fork, Montana has a bike shop, so it's pink. But notice I put the mile number, the elevation of Big Fork, and your elevation gain all in black. Sorry, all in red to indicate that there is off route. And if you needed to check that, you could always go down and look and see. Echo Lake Cafe is on the route, so it's in black. So there is some tricky ones like that, but if you have a question, always just go down and find the main point of interest, and it will give you the information to tell you that Big Fork is off route. So if you're ever confused, just go down a little bit further or ahead, and you'll find more information about that. Right here we have a note that's in red, but Whitefish Pass is in black. Whitefish Pass is on the route, but this note for Polebridge, Montana is red because Polebridge is off route, but it's giving information if you want to get there. You also have a little key right here that tells you what those colors mean on each page. All right, you'll note here on the Roseville, U.S. border point of interest that this 10 miles to Eureka is in green. That green box indicates that the complete distance from Roseville to Eureka is all paved. So you see a green box like here, up here, or here. That's telling you that distance between these 2 points of interest is completely paved. All right, so here's your key that tells you what these letters mean in the resupply section. You also have, there's your full distance for the pavement that we talked about. You got a list of bike shops and what towns they're in, and we have some important phone numbers here for you guys on the list as well. The next thing I want to point to you guys is this target finish times chart. What this is a chart to help you keep straight on what day you want to finish if you're shooting for a certain time. So we now know that the Tour Divide has staggered starts, so the 8 a.m. you'll have to just mentally plug your time in. But if you wanted to finish in 14 days, you'd have to finish on 6:23 before 8 a.m. You have to average 190.7 miles per day or 7.9 miles per hour. And the reason I put this in there is because if you start at 8 a.m., let's say, and you went to bed at midnight, and you woke up at 4 a.m., when you wake up at 4 a.m., you might be thinking, well, this is the second day I've gotten up and rode, so I'm on day 2. Your day 2 doesn't start till 8 a.m. in 1 second on that day. So about 2 weeks into the ride, that's going to be confusing, or if it's 3 a.m. and you're trying to finish. So know that 14 days, you got to finish on that date before whatever your start time is, and there's your distance. All right, there's also a note right here, and this note is on all the planning aids. It basically tells you which GPX file that is currently being used. In this case, it's the 2021 GPX file because the 2022 had a big fire detour. Also, we use the 10K because that's what people use in their navigating in their GPS or whatever it is they're using. So the numbers here are going to be, you notice it says that Antelope Wells is at 2670.1. Well, we all know the Tour Divide is over 2,700 miles long. The 10K version of the file makes it smaller by eliminating waypoints, which then makes the route less accurate, and the result is that you get a lower number. Now, this number will match your 10K in your GPS or your Wahoo or your phone, whatever you upload it to, but don't think that the numbers will be exact. You might not ride 45.7 on your computer because different technology is going to read different. It's just that the reality of the world. So if you're expecting these numbers to be exact when you're out there en route, they're not. They're going to be different for everybody, whether you're using a GPS, a phone, or whatever. So keep that in mind. They're as close as they can be with the limitations that we have with technology, but they are off slightly, but not so badly that you're going to be, the information will be misrepresented. So yeah, keep that in mind, and yeah, let's move on to the mileage chart. All right, so let's talk about mileage charts and elevation gain charts. The two of them are exactly the same, except for one's giving you mileage, one's giving you a cumulative elevation gain between the points. So we're not going to go over these separately because they work exactly the same. It's just the information that's being relayed to you is different. That's all. All right, let's get into it. All right, so right here we're looking at the Tour Divide mileage chart for New Mexico. And we've got basically a X, Y, or graph going on here, just like you'd find in the back of any old map book. How you read it is you basically look down the left side. So let's say that we are in Cuba and we want to go to Pi Town. All right, so Pi Town there's our destination. This is where we're at. This is our destination. So we go Cuba, we go across till we get to Pi Town right here, 190.7 miles. So there's Pi Town and there's Cuba. And that's how you read this. It's simple as that. Find what you're looking for, move across where you're going to. It tells you your mileage. The elevation gain charts, it works the same exact way, but when you look across, it's going to tell you like 14,000 feet of climbing or whatever it might be. Simple as that. Where you're at, where you want to go, find where the two intersect. Simple as that. Blue is water, red's off route, pink's the bike shop, and the black's the ones that are en route. And that is how you use the mileage chart or the elevation gain chart. And as usual, they are all based off of a certain GPX file, and it's right there on the listed, and it will change as they are updated. And it is the 10K version, just so that we're aware. And that 10K version means that the file is being compressed and it's not as accurate. So these numbers are going to be only as exact as the 10K file itself is. And in this case, I can tell you that it is not the exact distance that you would see on a regular one. The total distance on the 10K Tour Divide in 2021 was 2,670.1 miles, which we know the Tour Divide is over 2,700. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the numbers. They are going to match pretty close to your 10K file in your GPS or your phone, but remember, all those different devices are going to track distance differently. So if you're expecting to have exact numbers, you're not going to find those, but you're going to find something that is close enough that it's not going to be misrepresented, and you will still get there in the given amount of time that it's suggesting. So yeah, there you go. All right, hopefully this video gave you guys a really good understanding of how the different planning aids work and what they can do for you. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment down below, or you can go to 107project.com, and there's a contact page there, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. I'll also leave a link to the different planning aids page where you guys can purchase those, and also the Tour Divide resource that we have on the website. Like I said, thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. You guys, whether you're racing or touring out there this year, good luck, be safe, and have fun.